date to retain in the history of Africans, as former Ivorian President Laurent Gbagbo returned home after he was sent to The Hague. The homecoming Portugal's son saw the gathering of a huge crowd celebrating his return, as well as there was some unrest registered at the airport. In tonight's edition, we are honored to have Pan-Africanists and civil society with us to discuss issues in Ivory Coast. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and thank you very much for joining us in tonight's debate. I am talking of Derek Galim, a Pan-Africanist. He will be with us here in the studio, and Tabonkal, whom we are having live from Rwanda. Good evening to you, Derek, and it's my pleasure having you again.
Good evening, Van, and thanks for inviting. It's a pleasure being here.
Always. Tabonkal from Rwanda, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me once more into your program, and you're welcome.
Let us have the first part of the show. The return of Gbagbo to Ivory Coast, any impact in the country? Derek, I begin with you, yes or no?
Definitely there is.
Definitely, yes, there is an impact. Carl?
Yeah, definitely, honestly speaking, there is an impact on the country and even in Africa. The impact we felt even in Africa.
Right. And the second question, does his return affect the spirit of Pan-Africanism in other African countries? Carl, I begin with you.
Yes, it is going to affect.
Yes, Derek?
It is going to affect.
It is going to affect. Televiewers, let us have the second part of the show. After he was arrested and sent to The Hague over 10 years ago, and following the post-electoral violence that took place in Ivory Coast, leaving about 3,000 people dead, finally, Laurent Gbagbo is back in the country. And in tonight's edition, we are trying to find out whether his return will have any impact in the country. I will begin with you, Derek, a Pan-Africanist who thinks that yes, there are impacts, but then are they positive or negative, or what are these impacts in Ivory Coast?
Yeah, truly, definitely there are impacts to be felt in both Ivory Coast and Africa at large, and positive, negative, both are expected. First, considering the fact that there are mixed feelings among the Ivorians over his return. You know, there are people who would long to see his neck on the guillotine because they think he should be punished for the violence that took place during his reign as president, in which about 3,000 Ivorians were killed. Mm-hmm. And the blame on the side of the victim seems to have been laid entirely on him. Thank God for him, The Hague has not found him guilty of any crimes levied against him. On the other hand, his supporters, they have welcomed him like a god, which was expected, because Ivorians, as well as a majority of Africans, did not see anything wrong with his stand as a president, even despite the post-electoral violence that took place. I think this man, as a president, he had the good of his country at heart. And being the man he was, our main problem, which is always the imperial colonial master, I mean, they saw that this guy was becoming a threat to their interests. And it is true, they maneuvered whatever they did to see him lose the grip on power in Ivory Coast. And it doesn't come to me as a strange issue. It's already like common knowledge that in all French colonies, there is always a trouble with the northern part of the country. I think if you've studied all of them, gradually you get to discover that there is either one Islamist group at the north of every French African country. We discussed Chad a few weeks ago, and in Chad, all of them are from the north. They always call it an Islamist insurgency. It's a way of painting Islam black, but I think the Islamist insurgency is just always a name, because France cannot stand to claim the fact that they are responsible for the disorder that is going on in Africa. It happens in Chad, it happens in Mali, it happens in Burkina Faso, in Ivory Coast itself. It's the same. And therefore, the return of Gbagbo, which is well received by Pan-Africanists, I would say that it's supposed to spark a positive spirit in the country, especially as far as reconciliation is concerned. I think if Pan-Africanists are in tears today to see to it that Africa truly wipes out the boundaries that divide them, it's because they have realized that the boundaries, be they regional or continental, they were not there, or they are not set for the good of Africa. They're there to divide Africa more in order to ease the exploitative work of the colonial masters and the imperialists. And if Gbagbo's return is going to spark this spirit of reconciliation, it begins in Ivory Coast. And I think the reconciliation that we are longing to see in Ivory Coast is going to spark a fire that will burn throughout Africa. It's going to diffuse itself, and it will come to what we Pan-Africanists are longing to see happen in Africa. It's unfortunate most of our icons, mentors, or should I call them founding members, are dying without having the joy to see Africa reunite. We are mourning the death of the departure of Kenneth Kaunda of Zambia. He has been a real Pan-African father. And I think if his cry is taken, if his efforts are taken to the table by the present African leaders, Africa will truly begin to reunite. That is the first positive impact I see in the return of Laurent Gbagbo.
Surely you're speaking in the shoes of Pan-Africanists. You stand here representing them.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. And acquitted for crimes against humanity and war crimes. Tabonkal, what are some of these impacts you think that his return will have in Ivory Coast and in Africa as a whole? Derek talked of it will spark the spirit, it should spark the spirit of reconciliation in which his rival Alassane Ouattara is actually working towards that path.
Yeah, the return of Laurent Gbagbo, the President Laurent Gbagbo in Ivory Coast, it is going to really play a greater impact as far as reconciliation in Ivory Coast is concerned. For instance, you will discover that, like what you saw yesterday when Gbagbo landed at the airport in Ivory Coast, you saw the people that came in order to welcome him, be it the chiefs and be it the political class. And Ouattara should be honest. Ouattara should be honest enough to use Gbagbo in this situation to reconcile Ivory Coast. In what way? Firstly, Ouattara should be honest. The 20 years that a court in Ivory Coast gave to Gbagbo as a sentence, he should first of all grant amnesty. He should stop behaving in a political manner. Secondly, Gbagbo should really talk to his sympathizer, first of all, his political party called the Ivorian Popular Front, should first of all reconcile because they are seeded. After their reconciliation, we will now move to reconcile the thousands of families that lost one or two members in the post-election of 2010 or 2011 consequences. After this has been done, Gbagbo should now bring together maybe the trio, we call them the trio because will not be good for Gbagbo. He maybe want to like tell if is bad or wrong. God has helped, God has fought for Gbagbo, and God is continuing fighting for Ivory Coast and Africa in general. For instance, I want Gbagbo to first of all bring somebody, three Ouattara and the other Konan Didier and himself down around table so that they can discuss and see how Ivory Coast will move ahead. The first impact that Gbagbo will bring, that Gbagbo release and is present in Ivory Coast, is teaching some Africans or maybe our colonial masters, especially France, that they have no monopoly when it comes to whatever thing that they have to decide in Africa. Look at who sent Gbagbo in prison. I'll tell you it's France, and under the leadership of their former president called Nicolas Sarkozy. Sarkozy today is in trouble because the gods of Africa is fighting against him. That is why Gbagbo was released, and he killed one of the greatest African leaders called Gaddafi. And today he is paying what he did. This is coming to teach most of African leaders that France is now a toothless bulldog, that they should concentrate and rule their people the way they are supposed to rule them independently without any intervention, without France intruding. For example, it stands to Gbagbo that you see what Mali is trying to do today. You agree with me that some of the French army were caught in Mali days ago when they extracted raw materials like gold, and they were about to forward it, maybe to fly it over to France, but they were intercepted, and you now see the reason why what France is doing in Africa. So I thank God, and I thank the fact that Africans and African leaders should come to understand that the moment has come for us to take over to fight for our complete and total independence. And this will be thanks to Gbagbo, and also thanks to his predecessors in Africa like Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, Nnamdi Azikiwe, Thomas Sankara, and so forth and so on. So this is the impact Gbagbo release has come to play in Africa. Thank you very much.
To know from you, his homecoming is viewed as a test to stability in the country. So in your point of view, is there a possibility for stability or calm to return in Ivory Coast? His return yesterday sparked slight unrest. Some of his supporters were tear-gassed. And looking at this, or in the nearest future, will calm or stability effectively return in the country?
It all depends on Ouattara. Ouattara should be humble enough to go towards Gbagbo, and they let them sit and really discuss on how they are going to reconcile and bring peace in Ivory Coast. Ouattara should not behave like the colonial masters. He should go because it all suffices that Gbagbo decides to maybe call on his militant to protest, because you will bear with me and accept with me that the way Gbagbo was chased out of the presidency for Ouattara to come in. So it is Ouattara be humble enough, as I earlier said, go towards Gbagbo, so that Gbagbo is somebody, man of peace. They will see how so that peace reign in Ivory Coast. Because from what I saw, if Ouattara uses his army or policemen to chase Gbagbo's political parties members, it will not be good, and sympathizers, it will not be good. This will instead cause more havoc. So the time has come for Ouattara. He said Gbagbo is coming back. The government will be in charge of fed and all the life. Amnesty, the same thing Gbagbo did, so he should be as an electoral, go towards Gbagbo, discuss about peace, reconcile, and bring justice and peace in Ivory Coast, and this will serve as a lesson to other African countries.
Derek, now with your reaction here in the studio as regards to stability returning back in Ivory Coast.
I see stability returning to Ivory Coast, and that depends on the number of factors too. The reception at the airport yesterday, there was some unrest. Mm-hmm. The unrest was for a simple reason. They had expected the supporters had expected that they would leave them have a hug of Gbagbo, and that was not forthcoming. And they mounted pressure to see if they could have a touch of his hand. Mm-hmm. And I think if that was done, it's true, people always fear insecurity and stuff like that, the unforeseen. But if that was done, I think it would have been more of a joy than confusion and tear gassing the opponents. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was not a right decision to have been done, because I bet you, if the citizens of Ivory Coast, especially the victims of the unrest that happened before he was picked up from the presidential bunker, by who? By France and the UN, like I would say, if the people do not insist on the word justice, peace will definitely return. I would say that justice should be tampered with mercy. In this case, I think he was asking already that some clemency should be granted Gbagbo following the accusation about his pillage on BCAO, the Central African Bank. And it is true, ICC has found him not guilty. For the crimes that we levied against him. It's true, the authorities in Cote d'Ivoire, they judged him in absentia and sentenced him to a 20-year term. But I think if Ouattara does not hang on that, if he actually grants the clemency or the amnesty, he would have taken a bold step towards the establishment of a peace that Ivory Coast needs in order to develop from this moment onwards.
Let us take the second question. Does his return affect the spirit of Pan-Africanism in other African countries? Derek, you are a Pan-Africanist. Your point of view, you think that yes, it affects the spirit.
Definitely.
So how motivated or how discouraged are you people?
Well, talking of discouraged, we are not discouraged. Okay. We are rather hopeful. We're rather hopeful. You see, the banner of Pan-Africanism under which we stand, it is not the one that encourages division. I think if we don't see hope for Pan-Africans with the return of Laurent Gbagbo, we'll be pretending with ourselves. Because our move, it's true, we base it on the speech of Kwame Nkrumah. He's one of our cornerstones. And he said this: as long as we stay apart, be it regionally or continentally, we'll remain forever at the mercy of the colonial master or the imperialists. And that is not what is going to take Africa to where we Pan-Africanists are hoping that Africa should be. We're looking forward to a united Africa. And how does the unity come? Reconciliation is inevitable. We must be able to say, yes, probably you went wrong here, or you had good intentions here, but it came out this way. How do we reconcile? How do we come together and build that which belongs to us? I think the return of Gbagbo, interpreted in the Pan-Africanist spirit, is the beginning of Africans coming back home psychologically, consciously, and physically to realize the kind of Africa we want to have for ourselves. It's true, the mentors of Pan-Africanism are dying, but their ideology has stayed. I'm of the African Continental Unity Party wing of Pan-Africanism, and our vision is simple: to build an African global power base inspired by a new form of leadership. I mean, and how are we to succeed? We need to be able to bring out our leaders, produce them, and not depend on leaders that have produced outside and are sent here, because when they come here, they work for the people who sent them. And I think Gbagbo's return, it's very hopeful for Pan-Africanism. One, Carl mentioned already that Mali has learned from
the action of the French soldiers.
Yeah, the action of the French soldiers, and they are standing on their own. Ivory Coast is not going to make a mistake of entrusting everything of theirs to France any longer. It's true, I hear their presidency is, I mean, they are like tenants in their presidency. And who builds? France. And if France was able to pick Gbagbo the way they did from the presidential bunker, I think it's because the plan of the building was drawn by them, and they had a secret entry into the presidency, which probably up till the moment when Gbagbo was picked, the Ivorians did not know existed. And therefore, it's a lesson to them. We need to begin to build up African engineers, build up everything so that we are able to take our destiny into our hands. It's about unity, it's about one vision, it's about one destiny. And the African presidents that we have on seat, especially those in French African countries. I mean, their eyes are already opened. They don't need any spectacles to be able to know what awaits them. And I think the fact that African leaders have become so daring, that is what Pan-Africanism is about. Dare to take your destiny into your hands. And that is beginning to happen. I will clap my hands over the table and say the return of Gbagbo is supposed to inspire a type of come together. African leaders should from this moment learn how to come together, discuss and set strategies
for themselves
to be able to move Africa to where we want Africa to be.
All right, let us get the point of view of Carl. He is live in Rwanda. Carl, you equally think that this will affect the spirit of Pan-Africanism in African countries?
Honestly, Vanessa, I am telling you that the wheel of change is going towards Africa right now. And the wheel of change started since 1990. And in 1990, we talk about multi-party system that came to Africa. And the wheel of change in Africa today is going towards French colonies in Africa. Because French colonies in Africa, they have come to realize that France is not a good partner to deal with in Africa. That's the more reason why God has intervened in this issue to bless Africa. I will take very few examples. You will discover that since the acquittal of Gbagbo at the International Criminal Court, most African leaders, most French-speaking African leaders are taking their destiny into their hands. For example, let's take the case of what happened in Chad. Let's take what happened in Chad. I will not say this baby was with France, but France realized that this baby has grown wings in such a way that he did not want to hear whatever thing that France would say again. That's the more reason why he was instigating that African, especially Central Africa, should have its own currency. Now we move to Mali today. Mali have realized that, and all this is because of the acquittal of President Laurent Gbagbo at the International Criminal Court. Now we come to the case of Ivory Coast. Ouattara, if you see that Ouattara accepted Gbagbo should return to Ivory Coast because he's afraid. Ouattara wants to use this as a way to tell the international community that I have no problem with my predecessor called Laurent Gbagbo. He's already avoiding the fact that one day he also will go and answer questions at the level of the International Criminal Court. Now, if I want to bring Gbagbo story also has come to teach people like Guillaume Soro a bitter lesson, to tell them that it's not good in life to be a coward. Not only a coward, to be I would say a gossiper, or maybe what we call in quote in pidgin two-sided cutlass. That you eat here, eat there, disappoint and betray the people. It has all come to teach Africans that. Gbagbo's story has also come to teach the youth that you should stand on what you want, stand on the truth. That is why we are predicting that you discover that Gbagbo may not be the next president, the next Ivorian president, but I think that the person he has trained would follow his policy like Blé Goudé. So that is it.
Thank you very much, Carl. Thank you very much for your contributions. We are going to end up with Gary Lim in the studio. Derek, what will you advise former President Laurent Gbagbo at this stage? Will you advise him to sit back and act as a resource person to other African presidents, or will you advise him to be thinking of going back again into election the next term?
Thanks for that question. I really wish to say something about it. I would say, Laurent Gbagbo, if you want to retain the wisdom of the ancients, he should reconcile Ivory Coast with Ouattara as at now. And if it's possible, they should be able to hand over the power to someone who has a vision for the growth of an Ivory Coast without external influence. And once they do that, I bet you, if they stand together and remain resource persons to all other African countries, they would learn from their reconciliation that you see full-blown enemies. They're able to come together, stand and say, we made our mistakes, we have learned from them, and we think we should all grow together. The wish is, let us wipe out the boundaries and have a free Africa for Africans. The boundaries are not for our own good. The boundaries were for the good or the interest of the colonial masters.
That's it. Thank you very much, Derek Galim, for coming.
Thanks again immensely.
Ladies and gentlemen, we all are working towards a united Africa and learning from the story of Ivory Coast. Hope that other African presidents will learn from that. Take the rendezvous for tomorrow and stay tuned for programs continue on DBS television. Good night.
Vraiment.